We journalists don't often go back. Bosnia, Rwanda, Chechnya. The story moves on, and so do we. But since 1997, I've wanted to revisit Shabunda, a small town in Central Africa that back then was facing horror. This is the Eastern Congo, and what happened was that an undocumented massacre took place, one that I believe happened at this river and involved up to 120,000 people. The murdered were from this camp near Shabunda. Westerners had little sympathy for these people because many of them were responsible for the Rwandan genocide of 1994. But there were also women and children, hungry, exhausted, and miserable. In February 1997, the Tutsi army surged forward. They intended to exact revenge for the genocide by wiping out the murderers, but they wanted to do so in secrecy. The camp emptied at their approach. The people fled towards the river Ulindi, a tributary of the Congo itself. According to a Western aid worker, 200 soldiers took part in the massacre. Many died on this bridge. Those living here said the killing went on for 3 days. Residents downstream described the river as thick with bodies. The aid worker travelled the road to Shabunda 2 months later and said the ditches for 20 kilometres were also full of corpses. I wanted to hear the story from those who lived near Shabunda. Constantine Kaliki was there.
D'enterrer les gens parce que la population s'est faufilée, s'est cachée dans la forêt. Il y avait des cadavres qui sont déposés par-ci, par-là dans la rue, et donc dans la forêt, et des cadavres mangés par des oiseaux, et on a vu d'autres cadavres, et en passant, on voit des cadavres. Il y avait beaucoup de cadavres. D'ailleurs, ces cadavres ont donné l'épidémie à certains bon nombre de la population qui sont aussi morts. L'épidémie parce que des cadavres déposés, tout ça. Il y avait vraiment beaucoup de cadavres.
This is the forest where I visited the refugees. Muzungu Kimunzenzi lived beside the camp and watched it destroyed. By the UN's figures, countrywide, there may be as many as 200,000 Hutus missing, but Muzungu said no one has bothered to ask.
And all the refugees who were being in the camp were being killed.
Muzungu led me through the forest to what he said was a mass grave.
Hatukuwa na ile mafikiri ya kusabia watu paski hatukujua kama watasabiliwaka au hawatasabiliwaka. Si mie mikono yangu hii njoo kunazika. Mikono yangu. Mie mikono yangu hii. Njoo kunazika.
A consequence of genocide is that the horror spreads outwards. The residents of Shabunda watched the killing from the sidelines, but soon the brutality would be visited on them. Hutu survivors took to the forests and began to prey on the town. The massacre was just the beginning. Rape now became the primary weapon. Helen Bampo was among the many who suffered.
Niliingia kama paske kwa nilikuwa victime. Kisha nikaona niinue jina ya mwanamuke. Kudefendre dignité ya mwanamuke, peut-être vite nezo tumaliziki. Unaona? Ifo baheshimie mwanamuke hivi ni mtu. Ndio maana nipendaka tulalamike bangine inchi basikivi, shie tuko mumagumu hapa Shabunda. Tukalalamika, tukafama kontakte na hivi tukaona organizasyon ya kutunza wale batu ikakui. Paske ilikuwa hivi tuko hapa hauti ikala na harufu mubaya ya mwanamuke.
From what I've read, it was women of all ages. Is that true?
Bakimu gani? Sans exception. Maana yake iwe mtoto age de 9 iwe mwanamuke mwenye a 80 iwe mwamuke mwenye kunyonyesha, hakuna exception. Ni mwanamuke tu, sans exception. Bana violer en plein air comme ça. Le Mali est là, la population en train de produire.
So far this year, 4,500 rapes have been reported in the eastern Congo, and at a time when a peace of sorts is finally coming to Shabunda. A new national army has been formed, taking account of all the factions. 11 years ago, I fled the advancing Rwandan army on this same Red Cross plane as the agency's small team left the refugees behind. Today, the plane has returned with a happier cargo. These young men were child soldiers. At 10 or 11, they were taken from their homes and forced to become fighters in the war that engulfs Shabunda. Now, aged 16 and 17, they are arriving home in the denim outfits the Red Cross have given them. The most extraordinary thing about these scenes is that these boys have committed crimes, often against their own people. They were taken by the militias that preyed on Shabunda from the forests. Yet they're being welcomed home and forgiven.
Na hii hayo tunapenda sana. Mungu atusaidie tusiwe na mawazo ya wasiwasi na kurudi tena arme. Na yale walikokutupangia tutaendelea kuitimiza kama vile kawaida. Asante. Mimi nafika nitaishi, nitasoma, nitafanya ingine mapasho yangu. Kasi kuweza kusoma mimi na anja buchuruzi au mimi nalima mashamba na mimi naishi.
All this is the result of a genocide that is now 13 years gone. But in a town that has suffered so much, perhaps finally, perhaps briefly, there is a reason for hope.